Welcome to Lesson 2 with the Sony A6100, both like and unlike any other pro camera. We'll go through an introduction, the mode dial, video, wow features, and then we'll reach a conclusion. Hello everyone and welcome. The Sony A6100 has many features in common with other professional cameras, and also many features you'll find unique to this little powerhouse of a machine. It's both similar to any other camera and wildly individualistic in its own right. Even the ways it's like other cameras, it has its own take on those in common features. In this video, I'd like to show you how the Sony A6100 uniquely uses the features common to most cameras, and also introduce you to some of the innovations Sony gives you that you'll be wise to use once you purchase it. If you want to find the mode dial on the camera, look on the top right. That's where it's located on many of the cameras. On this camera, you have 10 modes or stations, which we'll go through. Some of them are what you'd expect on any camera, and a few of them are truly innovative and new, and we'll take more of a look at them, maybe now or a little bit later in the video. Here's what you see on the mode dial when you first switch on the Sony A6100. Most cameras have an automatic mode. I've covered that in my previous video on using automatic settings with the A6100. If you want to start to get a little more professional, you can move on to Program Auto. That automatically sets aperture and shutter speed. Other settings can be set as desired. You can switch ISO, white balance, and other things while the camera will figure out what the best aperture and shutter speeds are. Most cameras also have this. You can move on to Aperture Priority, which adjusts aperture to change the range, in focus, and amount of background blur. Small value blurs front and back, and large value makes even background in focus. If you have a fast lens and you're shooting a portrait, you might want to open up the lens to f2.8 or f1.8. If you want to shoot a landscape, you might want to close it down to f11 or f16. Most cameras also have this setting. Then you can move on to Shutter Priority. That adjusts shutter speed manually for different effects of moving subjects. Faster shutter speed is used to make objects appear to stop momentarily. Slower speed is used to capture traces of movement. You can see in this photo that a slower speed is used to capture the white creamy effect on a waterfall. This is something, again, you can get creative with, and it's something that most cameras have on the mode dial. Manual exposure adjusts aperture and shutter speed manually. You can shoot images with trailing motion by using long aperture. With manual exposure, you have complete control over everything. So, if you have a certain idea in mind of how you want a photo to look, use manual exposure. Most pros use this because it gives them so many options to make a photo look the way they want it to look. Memory recall shoots with preset settings. Preset the settings with camera 1, camera 2, memory in camera settings 1 menu. This is good if you need to react instantly to a situation. If suddenly you see a bird flying past and you have a slow shutter speed set, you can switch to memory recall if you have a fast shutter speed preset. Also, you can use a memory recall to open up the camera if you want to shoot a portrait or whatever very quickly. It's up to you how you use this. Many other cameras also have this sort of setting. Movie, the mode for shooting movies. You can check the angle of view before shooting. That just means you can zoom in or zoom out. There are lots of other cameras that also have this setting. We'll get into more settings in video once we move on a little bit towards that. But movie generally accepts the settings from the mode dial, the things you have programmed already in, whether you're in manual, shutter, aperture, or program. S&Q, this is something you don't find everywhere. This is something that makes the A6100 really a little different. Something on the mode dial that you don't find everywhere. This is the mode for S&Q motion shooting. You can record slow motion and quick motion movies by setting the shooting and recording frame rates. We'll get into how that's done a little later in the video section. But this is something that's very handy and very innovative in the A6100. Sweep panorama. Many movies have, or many cameras have, sweep panorama. Creates a panoramic image while you move the camera left, right, or up and down at a fixed speed. You can go into the menu and change these settings, whether you want to shoot left or right, up or down. You can shoot from your toes to the sky. By default, I believe it's set to shoot sweep panorama to the right. Panorama knits together a number of images to make a long image. Scene selection selects a mode suitable for the subject you want to capture and the environment. This is another automatic setting. With it, you can shoot a portrait, you can shoot a landscape, you can shoot handheld. There are all sorts of settings in there, but it's another automatic setting. This is something a little bit different too. And then we get back where we started, to auto mode. You can shoot 4K video with the A6100 fairly easily. All you have to do is set the mode dial to auto and then go into the menu, choose Camera 2 folder, go down to File Format, and then in File Format choose HAVC S 4K, and then you'll be shooting in 4K video. It's relatively simple. You get some good results with that too. In this video section, I want to talk about some other things though. We can stay on the mode dial and we can go back to the S&Q setting for slow and quick video and get some interesting results. You have all sorts of options with S&Q recording. This is 1 frame per second. This is 8 frames per second. Go into S&Q settings. You can go to frame rate. Here it's set for 1 frame per second. If you go in there, you can choose one of many options: 1 frame per second, 2, 4, 8, 15, 30 is pretty normal, 60 is a little bit fast, and 120. 120 gives you fast motion, or slow motion. I'm sorry, you think backwards with this. You think you get fast motion with 120 frames per second, but that plays at 30 frames per second, so it looks slow. This is slow motion video recorded at 120 frames per second. You can also change the exposure mode for S&Q recording. Go into exposure mode, then you have the choices of program auto, aperture priority, shutter priority, and manual exposure. The camera tells you what these are for, so you can check those out and try those depending on what sort of video you want to shoot. I generally leave it on program auto because the camera is pretty smart about these things. To shoot 4K video with this camera, you have to choose 4K video. You do that by going to Menu, Camera 2, or Movie 1. Then you go down to File Format, and you choose XAVC S4K. S stands for the commercial version of 4K video that Sony puts out. The professional version goes in their professional camcorders and things like that. By default, it's set to HD video, but if you go in there again, you see you can also do AVCHD video. But if you want to shoot 4K, you have to choose 4K. Once you do that, you can also choose record settings. The higher record setting you use, the more information is in your file and the better quality you get. But it uses up more memory, and you have to be concerned with that. That concludes this video on some of the great and unique new features on the Sony A6100. I hope you found it useful. I also hope you'll subscribe, like, and comment on this video. Stay safe.